Skirptards, beware. You are listening to Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
Pyramid on the snakes. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons and monsters and serpents and Skirptards to Brothers of the Serpent podcast, episode 56. Coming to you not live from the 10x10x10 tangent cube of science, nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed high atop the Edwards Plateau. And as always, we are joined by our friend Mr. Brett England. He is the Watcher. That's right, the Watcher. He has eyes in every satellite, ears in every server. Google was constructed to serve the Watcher. How you doing, buddy?
Feeling slightly inadequate. I don't think I can ever live up to the hype.
Not true. Not true.
What's the temperature down there in your super secret bunker underneath your super secret spacecraft in super secret outer space?
It is a super cool, super secret 70 degrees.
All right. Are you sure it's not 72?
Yeah, that one.
Okay.
Adds up to 9.
That's
totally
totally
what it is.
He was trying to keep it secret.
Are you sure it's not 72
my
degrees
thermostat
Celsius?
goes from 63 to 72 to 81, so I just keep it right there in the middle.
You're not doing hot quantum yoga? 72 degrees Celsius?
72 degrees Celsius.
No.
Hot quantum yoga.
Sounds terrible.
Quantum
Yeah,
yoga.
that's gross.
No, I've got to keep myself focused. Whenever I do hot quantum yoga, some of me's over here, some of it's over there.
Gotta stay focused.
All right, enough with the nerdy science jokes. Let's podcast.
All right, so what do we got for the news this week?
Hot off the press.
Hot off the presses.
We are approaching the sun, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know if we've ever talked about the sun on this podcast, but
it's kind of important, though.
Yeah, NASA
Sort of a big thing.
readies a probe to touch the sun with cutting-edge heat shield. They're gonna go touch the sun.
They're
with a
gonna
heat
touch
shield.
this.
I saw that headline. I was like, "Whoa, dude! This has got to be some super quantum, super conducting, super heat shield,
Super
super insulating, super heat shield." So yeah, for the first time in human history, we are going to quote touch the sun. As NASA prepares for an August 4th launch, it has unveiled a cutting-edge heat shield installed on June 27th that will keep the spacecraft from being burnt to a crisp. The probe's mission will take it within 4 million miles of the sun. A region of space never before visited by human-made spacecraft. Only by alien-made ones. I put that in there. For comparison's sake, the closest that Mercury ever gets to the sun is approximately 29 million miles. So we are kicking Mercury's ass.
All right.
With our super insulating, sun-touching heat shield.
Yeah. I thought they were just going to be using mercury, but okay.
Yeah. The heat shield is a rounded carbon composite sandwich. Oh, wait. Whoa.
Composite sandwiches.
This is my first time sub-vocalizing this. Hold on. Heat shield is a rounded carbon composite sandwiching a lightweight carbon foam core. It is also sprayed with a specially formulated white coating to reflect as much of the sun's energy away from the spacecraft as possible.
Well, when it gets close to the sun, it's going to turn black.
That's right.
It's going to get burnt.
That's right.
All right. Just
The shield will prevent the core of the spacecraft from being exposed to temperatures reaching nearly 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm not going to give you guys Celsius. But I should, just in case there are Russians. 1,370 degrees Celsius. Provided the shield does its job, NASA believes the instruments will be kept at a relatively comfortable temperature of about 85 degrees Fahrenheit. That's pretty impressive.
That is pretty impressive.
So in front of the shield, fiery hellscape. Behind the shield, serene summer afternoon. That's what the story said.
That's a great article.
Serene summer afternoon.
Yeah, so
Get a light suntan and, lay out
we are
in the
going
grass.
to touch the sun
From 4
4 million miles away. That's pretty cool, though.
That is cool.
They're finally focusing on the sun, people.
Yeah, that's a good deal. I remember like one of the guys I used to debate with online, you know, one of the users of the Manual for How the Universe Works Final Edition, talked about how, like, you know, the ceramic plates in the bottom of the space shuttle, you know, saved it from re-entry, and how, so we were arguing about this because of some other reason, which is not important. But the point was is that, like, he was talking about how that was like total cutting edge, and like it was, you know, it was like this badass shit that we had to have be able to for any spaceship to be able to come into the Earth, like to come from space to Earth. And I was like, well, no, that's if it's falling.
Right.
And, like, if you have a powered entry, you don't need heat shielding.
Right.
But now he's got a new heat shield that he can brag about in his Manual for How the Universe Works Final Edition.
It's pretty cool. The purpose of the mission is to sample the corona
Yeah, the atmosphere.
and learn more about the inner workings of the sun. Yeah.
Brett's saying, no, ablative tiles are the only way to enter the atmosphere. That's right. And really, those tiles are phenomenal. Like, the ablation is something ridiculous. Like, it makes one little flake of ash for every 4,000 degrees or BTUs you put on it or something like that.
This would be really funny, like, in a couple of years. Sun-touching spacecraft Parker burns up on re-entry on its way back to Earth. Sadly, they forgot to put the ablative tiles on the front of the spacecraft.
What about its super heat shielding? Wait.
Yeah, those were toasted when it touched the sun.
That's right, they turn black.
All right, I got something else here. Mysterious giant sarcophagus discovered in Egypt.
Ah,
Yeah.
I saw that. That's cool.
Yeah, an 8.7 foot long and 5.4 foot wide, largest ever found sarcophagus discovered in Egypt. Egyptologists say, we know what it was for, we know who was in there, we know why it was buried, we know everything about it.
And everyone
Nothing
around
to
the
see
world
here.
made these, no big deal.
That's pretty much what the story says. I'm not gonna... It's retarded. Yeah.
Oh, man. We know who it was, and we know what it was for.
They also found a carved alabaster head discovered near the site, and they were like, yeah, that was probably the guy that was buried in it. But there was no one in it.
Of course.
But anyway, they knew who was there, and they knew why it was there, and they knew how it was built, and how long it took, and how long ago it was. And
Yeah. Why don't you grab that alabaster head? That's probably who was buried in it.
this is another one of those stories that was written so, like, I don't know, ADD. It was like,
Oh, yeah.
reading this gave me ADD.
I got ADD from reading the...
Yeah. It just like jumps all over the place till
The story about the sarcophagus?
yeah.
Oh, yeah, because they have to explain to you the standard model stuff
Oh, but
to
it's
make
like
sure that you understand.
like you're on your way to learn about this massive sarcophagus, and then there's a sort of a midway headline: 2,200-year-old gold coin discovered in Egypt, and they tell you about that. And then a little while later, they're like, amazing mummy discovered. 2,500-year-old Egyptian coffin was thought to be empty, and they tell you about that.
So the reporter had ADD.
Yeah. I mean, it
You go
just
to Egypt and they're finding so much shit that, like, you're trying to write your article, and then, like, they come in with a gold coin. You're like, holy shit, 2,000-year-old gold coin.
yeah. Okay, so last but not least, scientists discover world's oldest couleur, bright pink.
Oh. I guess it was written in...
It was written in
England.
Yes. Couleur.
Allure.
Freaking don't know how to spell color. Anyway, yeah, so the comments were really funny because it's like, okay, they found this bright pink pigment. It was found in 1.1 billion-year-old rocks.
Oh.
And so the people who only read the headline were in the comments saying, obviously that's not the oldest color because the rocks were there first. They're gray. It was so freaking funny, dude. Anyway,
That kind of reminds me of another story. Sorry, go ahead.
it's okay. Basically, it's the oldest biological pigment that they have found. so far.
Okay.
You know.
Biological, as in like it's made by organisms and not
Right. It's a pigment.
a billion years.
It's a pigment. I'm assuming pigments are
Yeah,
biological.
coloration. Yeah, like a dye.
Yeah. So.
I remember this story I read, and it involved bright pink, and very special colors. This guy had invented the perfect black. Do you remember this? I told you about it. It's
keep
kind of
going.
funny. It's kind of a funny story, yeah. So this dude, like an artist, he's like a modern artist or whatever. He invented this pigment, this ink or something that is like really, like I think they called it like crystal black or something like that. It's just-
Absorbs all light.
yeah, it's just like you look at it and you want to fall in, right? It's like perfect black. But he patented it. And so no one else can use it but him, right? And so all these other artists were annoyed that because they're, artists are like, but we share things, like we come up with these things and we share these, like, so this other dude invented this bright, like impossibly bright neon pink and then set it so that just that guy can't use that color.
That's right.
I told you that story.
Yeah.
He sells it on his website, and he's like, by buying this, you sign an affidavit that you will not give it to that guy. That's awesome.
But was it 1.1 billion years old?
Probably not.
there were a bunch of people so mad that it was pink.
Yeah.
They're like,
Why is it pink?
the whole comments section totally got political. It's like, this is more of the same, blah, blah, trying to push this crap on us.
Oh, you're pushing your pinko crap on us.
I cannot do that.
So that's it for the Snake Bro news.
All right, Snake Bro News. Now we go to weather. It's going to be hot.
On the side.
The sun.
For the next billion years.
Billion years, and then it'll turn pink. All right. So, we got a request to do some stuff on superstitions.
Oh, yeah.
And you did some research on that.
I did.
I have some stuff on Ouija boards and some things about
Okay.
mirrors.
All right, cool.
So, you want to do the Ouija boards first, or go?
Yeah,
All right.
give me everything.
All
you
right.
got.
Lay it on me.
Lay it on me, bro.
Oh no! Oh no!
I just spilled some salt. Don't worry.
Better throw it over your shoulder.
Done.
Okay. Be careful what you wish for. Ouija boards unraveled. Now I haven't actually read this story. Going to subvocalize it right now. This is on ancient-origins.net, so this is a great site. Ouija boards, also called spirit boards or talking boards, have been part of various cultures long before the introduction of the quote-unquote game in the 19th century. Ouija, in fact, is the name of the game invented by Elijah Bond. Authentic Ouija boards are known to practitioners as the aforementioned spirit or talking board. Regardless, these panels all share characteristics. The board itself has each letter of the alphabet dictated, as well as the numbers 0 through 9, and then whether or not it is inscribed with hello, goodbye, or other full words depends on the creator of the board itself. Each board has a planchette, an essential piece in the ritual. It is the planchette which the people choosing to communicate place their hands upon in the hopes that the spirits will move it and create a message. So most of us know that. Here's a very old picture of Ouija.
I did not realize it was a Ouija.
Ouija.
I used to call it a Ouija. Ouija board.
Ouija.
And no, I thought the A was a Ouija board. Hey, do you have a Ouija board?
A Ouija board?
I totally learned something today.
Despite the lengthy history of talking boards, modern scientists are highly invested in disproving their use.
No, I learned something else. Nah.
One of the prominent theories is called, quote, the ideomotor effect, unquote. This effect can occur in two different ways. Either someone intentionally moves his or herself to jostle the table, or the audience accidentally moves the table through subconscious muscular twitches.
Do that.
When paired with a strong desire for a supernatural effect, it is easy for spirit board users to believe the spirits are behind these movements. In essence, The ideomotor effect is most effective when the participants have a strong source of faith in the board. I hate that explanation. The ideomotor effect is best exemplified in a parlor trick called table tilting. This practice is precisely what it sounds like. The table is shifted and moved, thereby allowing the pointer to move as well. This could be a simple actual tilting by a certain person or party, or a more athletic affair. Popular in the Victorian era, when the supernatural and occult were of intrigue to the rich and poor alike, table tilting consisted of the table jerking violently, in which the sitters would find themselves chasing around the room trying to keep up with the table. Interestingly, though this practice did prove the falseness of the spiritual claims, the experiments revealed it was caused by the aforementioned accidental movements or muscular twitches by the participants.
Did you vet this article at all?
No. That's what I said. I've never read it. Chinese origins. But he's given the explanations. Chinese origins. Historically, talking boards find their beginnings in the Chinese Liu Song dynasty, which is 5th century AD, and was popularized later by a subsequent Song dynasty, 10 to 13th centuries AD, called planchette writing or Fuji. These boards were similarly used to communicate with the deceased. However, it was believed to be a form of necromancy rather than a mere instrument akin to a telephone. In Fuji, however, the writing was created through a sieve to which was attached a short stick. It was held generally by two persons at either side to trace characters on sand or ashes. Because the Chinese have like 50,000 characters, so you can't put them all on the board.
Yeah.
So the dead have to write.
No ground tilting allowed.
Right. No ground tilting allowed. The characters were supposed to have been produced by the gods. Oh, the gods. These historical facts are pertinent to the study of talking boards as it reveals the extensive culture surrounding the practice. Okay, so the modern board. In the present day, spirit boards continue to be known as a form of telephoning between the worlds of the living and the dead. The board itself has retained the general template of the earlier 19th century patented models, i.e. Bond's game. That's a picture of like a modern board. Oh, yeah. Okay, Ouija board influences modern murder case. The modern day Ouija is not all fun and games, and in one particular case, its use had a very serious outcome. A convicted double murderer won the right to a retrial on the basis that 4 of the jury had used a Ouija board the night before finding him guilty.
Whoa.
Stephen Young of Pembury, England, a 35-year-old insurance broker, was given a life sentence on March 2017 for murdering the newlywed couple Harry and Nicola Fuller at their cottage in Wadhurst, East Sussex. However, he was given a retrial after 4 jury members disclosed that the night before returning their verdicts, they had used a Ouija board to contact the spirit of murder victim Harry Fuller, who they believed told them to vote guilty.
Wow.
See, okay, now I'll break from
What happened with his retrial?
I moved for one of those bad court thingies.
You mean a mistrial?
Yeah. Right. While talking boards have become less seriously valued among participants today, it does remain an occasional game or more regularly a daring challenge. For all the experiments science has performed, few things are more powerful than the beliefs of the mind. Yeah, so that guy is obviously a scripter.
Yeah.
And that didn't go as much into the history of it that I wanted it to. But there is another one called Tracing the Origins of the Infamous Ouija Board.
Brett says, yeah, the thing accidentally spells the word. Like, okay, you know, the table's like flying all around the room and it accidentally spells
the word
right
relevant.
word. Right.
So here's my problem with Ouija. Like, let's set aside the question of whether or not you're talking to dead people, because I don't think that you can tell. Like, if you're talking to something that isn't, if it isn't ideomotor, right, bullshit, if it's not that, and it's actually something much more strange going on, how do you know what you're talking to? The problem with the Ouija board, and this is like all the horror stories you hear about them, are always like somebody opens the board, they start the game, the planchette starts to move, people start to freak out, and then eventually it says something very strange, and then everyone flips out, and the board gets thrown into a closet, and they stop. Right? That's a pretty standard Ouija board story. Or they burn it, or they throw it away, or whatever. The problem with that is that every ritual has an ending, and Ouija is no different. If you don't finish the game, in other words, if you don't complete the ritual, you don't close the door.
Yes.
Okay? So one of my ideas that I've had, and this is just...
Will you go away? No.
So one of my ideas that I've had about places that have like strange hauntings or strange activities, or where I've gone through the internet and read tons and tons of people's stories about stuff that they experience or whatever. Like you move into a new, it's like another standard story is a young family moves into a new house and their kid starts experiencing stuff, right? Yeah. Children are very open to the quote-unquote paranormal, and they are always talking about a door. So they're usually afraid of their closet or under their bed or whatever, but they're talking about something in the walls or something coming out of a door, okay? And I've had this idea that like any house that had an Ouija ritual that was improperly like closed, right, where someone flipped out, threw the board away, or like the mom comes in, finds you have the board and takes it away from you, and like, you know, she throws it away or whatever, you haven't shut the portal.
Huh.
And it just sits there, right? And anything that's attractive to something from the other side, like a child, will pull things through it. And the other thing about Ouija is you don't know what you're talking to. You know, you're like, I'd like to speak to my dead father. Well, how do you tell if it's dear old dad? You can't. Yeah. You know, something is moving a planchette around. You know, and it's using all of you to do it, right? Which is probably, like, I've also had this idea that like the ideomotor thing, maybe because scientists aren't thinking all the way through it. Like, well,
it seems to me it would be part of the equation, right? I mean,
yeah. If you don't,
obviously, you have to put your hands on it.
Yeah, and to me, it seems like the most obvious way the spirit would. It's almost like everybody's participating in a mediumship. Yeah. The most obvious way the spirit would move it is to use your hands. Right. But you feel like you're like, I'm not doing this. But it is all of your hands moving the thing around. Right. Right? So scientists hook up stuff to people and be like, well, your muscles are moving it around. So all of you just really, really want this to be spiritual. Because they don't consider, like you should do when you're doing good science, the other side of the equation, the possibility that the reason it's being moved by people's muscles is because something else is controlling it because they're asking it to. Yeah. And that implies that everyone can be a medium. Right. And like if you look at all of the most spiritual practices will tell you that the most common or the easiest reach spirits are kind of on the low end. Like if you look at any of the Eastern stuff or whatever, they tell you to be very careful with summonings like that because the ones that come first, the ones that are the closest to us in this material realm are the ones that are not good. The higher ascended ones are way up there, you know, and they're sort of distant, like not distant, but they're separate from this realm. So the ones that are closest to this realm are the fallen, you know, and they're not necessarily good. And they'll pretend to be your dad. Yeah. And then tell you something completely messed up, you know, or they'll pretend to be whatever. And like you always see that with the Ouija. It starts out pretty benign, and then something happens that freaks everyone out, you know. So.
Side note, the Ouija board retrial, the murder was still found guilty.
Coincidence?
No! Okay, so can we safely say that was a good guy?
The one telling him to vote guilty?
Vote guilty.
Yeah. But even if it's a bad guy, he'd still say vote guilty, just because they like to see people die.
Oh, okay.
You know. Or people, like, they just like to cause mayhem. He might have said,
but if he was a murderer,
he might have said vote guilty knowing that would mess the trial up. You know?
Oh, okay, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like these things are devious, tricky.
Okay. So don't try it at home, folks. You need to contact a professional snake bro. If you want to use an Ouija board. We know how to pronounce it properly.
A Ouija board.
Yeah. If you want to use a Ouija board.
That's right. It has a J in it, and then and then a we. It's a Ouija board. Okay, let's see what else I got in here. I have this stuff about mirrors, but I need to wait for after the break to look at that.
All right, well, I did some digging into superstitions, and the one that I landed on that I actually rabbit holed was knock on wood.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know why, but I just pulled up a list. Like, there was this big list that was like 55 different random superstitions or whatever. Most of them I had never even heard of or whatever, but I've heard knock on wood, and I've seen so many people do it. I've done it. I've heard it. You know what I'm saying? It's just one of those ones people do.
I've never done it. Knock on wood.
Yeah, so I looked it up, and basically it's the way I've always seen it used, and the way I've used it is like you knock on wood when something that's being talked about, like if a bad thing's being talked about and you don't want it to happen, you knock on wood, right? Some bad possibility, or like this has never happened to me, then you knock on wood. So the other idea is like if there's good happening and you want it to continue. That's the other way to look at it, right?
Right. Like
I haven't hit a deer yet.
Business has been, knock on wood. Business has been going great. Knock on wood.
You're right. So, but in the same sense, like it's all over the world. Like there was like when I started digging into it, there's just all these cultures from every different part of the globe, and they all have a similar thing. It's like it's always having to do with a bad thing happening or in not wanting it to happen.
Yeah.
It's something that's being talked about that's bad that you don't want to happen, or continuing something that's good. It's always like that, and there's different ways of like most of the time it's knocking on wood or touch the wood, touch wood.
Yeah.
And in pretty much every one, the bad thing or whatever it was, or the idea of a good thing that you wanted to continue was that you didn't want to jinx it.
Right.
You didn't want to jinx the good thing, you know?
Yeah.
It was like preventing a jinx or
Yeah.
or whatever. And then it's even used in some cultures, like if two people say something at the same time, you knock on wood to
Yeah.
prevent the jinx.
Okay.
And here but like since I was a kid, we always just said jinx.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Don't jinx it.
So then I looked up jinx, and I'm like, okay, what does this come from? And jinx actually that got into etymology, and jinx, the origin of the word, maybe Brett, you can pull it up, but I believe it comes from the Greek word for a bird called the wryneck.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what they call that bird, the jinx. But I guess our name for it is the wryneck, and it's like the reason why it's called a wryneck is because you turn its head almost 180 degrees, and
which is freaky.
Yeah, it looks freaky, right? Like in the picture that I saw, that the bird's like body is there and its beak is like sticking down its back, and you're like, whoa, dude. It's weird. But yeah, there was all this stuff describing the wryneck compared with the jinx or whatever, and then sure enough, it's a woodpecker. So yeah, of course, knock on wood.
Yeah.
So that you don't jinx it.
And you hit it 3 times.
Yeah, that's all you have to do. But it's not like a traditional woodpecker. It doesn't actually cut holes in the wood to make a nest, but it actually will use nests of other woodpeckers and then use other woodpeckers' holes to like get the bugs out and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of like
Jinxing if you're the woodpecker, you're being jinxed.
That's right, dude. And then when the woodpecker shows up, you know, the wryneck flips his head around and acts all crazy, and the woodpecker's like, whoa! Takes off. Dude, like, I think it actually uses its head turning as some weird defense mechanism or something like that.
Yeah.
But I thought that was interesting. Jinx is a woodpecker, and you don't want to jinx it, so knock on wood. And it's all over the world,
That's crazy.
and it's like really ancient. So
That's awesome.
at least thousands of years.
Yeah, so
It's been traced back.
when we were talking about this before, I was thinking about it reminded me of the base around some of the parts of Göbekli Tepe where the birds are.
Oh, and the wryneck is used in witchcraft too. I forgot. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, the Watcher.
jinx.
The Watcher brought that up. Yeah. You gonna jinx? Yeah. She turned me into a wryneck. I got better. But I was thinking about Göbekli Tepe, how they have down at the base, like what you would call the trim down at the base of the enclosures. Some of them, all those birds are carved, or the high relief, they're high relief birds or whatever, and like they're all kind of like marching in a line, but every other one has its head turned around backwards.
What kind of birds are they?
It's hard to tell. They look like flightless birds.
Do they have long necks though?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And the idea right now is that they're some kind of extinct bird, but still, it's interesting. Like, humans would always pay attention to anything that could turn its head around 180 degrees, right? Like, owls do the same thing. They're like, you're like, whoa. It's like,
Yeah. That was another one that I saw in the superstitions that I didn't actually look into, is the whole situation with owls, but they're also used in witchcraft.
the owls are not what they seem. Do you remember the owl? Did we tell the story about the owl that we encountered on this podcast? Man, that was a crazy thing.
Yeah, it sucked. We're driving down to a ranch in Hondo in the middle of the night, and it just like swoops down out of the sky and lands right in the center of our lane, and just like turns around and looks at us, and then bam,
Bam, hit it.
ran right over it. And then it was huge, so I pulled over.
Yeah, it's the biggest owl in the world. It's that species is the largest owl in the world.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It was huge.
Yeah. It's an enormous bird. Yeah.
So we got out, and it was still alive. It was just like,
Flopping around on the.
kind of dazed.
Yeah.
So we actually picked it up and put it in the car and took it to the ranch with us.
Yeah, we swaddled it in a blanket and kind of put it where it could be like safe in the dark and lay there.
I had a compartment in the back
Yeah.
of my vehicle, and we put it in there, and then got to the ranch and like got it out, and we were like, is it dead? I don't know. Pulled it out, and it just like stood up on my arm.
Yeah, and it's huge.
It's like massive. I was like, oh God. And it like turned around and looked at us.
Yeah.
And then just like looked away, and we were like, okay. So we went and just like put it under the barn lean-to.
And your dog got out of the car halfway there and was trying to go get it. And I was like, Mouse, no.
Oh, yeah.
Mouse, no. Mouse, no.
But it like lived, it survived there for like a week or something.
Yeah.
Finally.
Yeah,
And,
finally died.
It sucked.
Yeah, it must have had some kind of brain damage.
Yeah.
But it
Too
did-
bad.
Yeah. It did
Terrible
live there
owl
for a while.
story.
Yeah, it's a terrible owl story. But it was an interesting thing because it was synchronicity. It was synchronicitous? Synchronicity?
Everything we dealt with that weekend died.
That's not what I meant, but okay.
We tried to save those bees, and they died.
And
We tried to save the owl, and it died.
and now this segment is dead. So we need to take a break.
Yeah. Just turn it off.
Just hit stop.
That bird was like, ow. Welcome back, folks. Brothers of the Serpent Podcast. Segment 2. Probably jinxed us in the process. That's really mean. It was sad. Anyway, sorry to take you down that dark road, folks, but we're coming back out of the dark here with Sun Probe.
More Sun Probe news.
I'm just kidding.
Sun Probe.
Just kidding. All right. I just wanted to. Brett brought up that the Wryneck
Was used in witchcraft.
Jinx, yeah, used in witchcraft. But Jinx actually came from a Greek myth or something. Let me see. I got it here.
And it's spelled weird in
Yeah, it
Greek,
came
right?
from the name of a.
Winks?
Okay, yeah, Iyynx. Because J and I are actually the same letter in Latin. The Latin Jinx came from the Greek name of the Wryneck bird, Iyynx, associated with sorcery. Not only was the bird used in casting of spells and in divination, but the ancient Romans and Greeks traced the bird's mythological origins to a sorceress named Lynx. who is transformed into this bird to punish her for a spell cast on the god Zeus. So this is where I wanted to tell you this because, okay, we were talking about Zeus being Jupiter or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. So I looked up Lynx, Lynx. In Greek mythology, Lynx was an Arcadian Oread nymph. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. A daughter of the god Pan, who is like the god of nature and
the great god Pan is very ancient, like much older than the other ones. Yeah.
nature and shepherds and all kinds of weird stuff.
Usually shows up as a dude with a goat head, horns.
Yeah,
he has
and
deer
goat
antlers,
legs.
goat head, like
Yeah.
Mr. Timnus.
Yeah, exactly. Pan is the god of the wild, shepherds and flocks, nature of mountain wilds, rustic music, and impromptus, and the companion of nymphs. Nymphs.
Yeah, they still call them the pan flute, the little instrument with all the different reeds.
Yeah.
It's called the pan flute.
Yeah.
Stand down.
So he'd go skipping around
Yeah.
the forest and like leading all the rats and stuff.
Yeah.
Or was that guy wearing a plaid shirt? I can't remember. Okay. So Lynx was a daughter of the god Pan and Echo. And Echo is another nymph character who was like cursed for not protecting Zeus when he was going off to hang out with the nymphs.
Yeah.
And was like cursed to only be able to say the last thing that was spoken to them.
Right.
Spoken to her.
Echo.
Yeah. Okay, so she cast a spell on Zeus, she being Lynx, cast a spell on Zeus, which caused him to fall in love with Io, the moon of Jupiter, right?
Jupiter, yeah.
Is that where the hydrocarbons are at?
No, those are on
Titan. Yeah. In consequence of this, Hera, who I don't know who Hera is.
Hera is the wife of Zeus.
Oh, okay. Hera metamorphosed her into the bird called the Jinx. So that's what that sound is in Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah,
It's the
you got
Jinx.
jinxed. That's right.
According to another story, Jinx was a daughter of Pierus, and she and her sisters had presumed to enter into a musical contest with the Muses. She was changed into the bird Jinx. This bird, the symbol of passionate and restless love, was given by Aphrodite to Jason, who, by turning it round and pronouncing certain magic words, excited the love of Medea. There's just all kinds of stuff in there, man.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I really need to learn all these stupid stories.
Jason was
stupid myths.
Jason was the guy who was famously went with the Argonauts to get the Golden Fleece.
Where did you learn all the stuff about the Greek stories? Like,
By reading, like I would get into ancient myths and then I would follow these stories and like try to figure out what was going on and like.
is there just a volume
A
that
compendium?
just has like
You like that? Compendium?
a compendium? Yes, yes. Is there a compendium I might sub-vocalize? Because that would be great. Like, give me the whole rundown. You know, start me off with all the characters and tell me all their stories. Like, where's that book?
All right.
Where's that compendium?
Truth comes out. I learned my first large amount of Greek mythology from Titan Quest. and it was so fascinating that I went and dug out all the rest of it. But yes, Titan Quest taught me, I mean, like, bro, you can totally play that game and it teaches you every fucking thing you need to know about Greek mythology. It is just, everyone you talk to tells you a story. And it is phenomenal. It blew my mind. But that's why I played, the gameplay is like, you're running around fighting monsters, but like, you get to the cities and you go talk to this guy and he tells you this crazy story that's all Greek mythology. And then you get to Egypt and he tells you all the Egyptian stories. And then you go into China and they tell you all the Chinese stories. It was just fantastic. I learned a lot of lore and myth from that game.
Okay, Watcher. Russ wins.
Get Kyle Titan Quest.
The Watcher says, go to a university bookstore and get the textbook from Greek mythology.
Or go get Titan Quest.
Or go get a video game. Oh, man.
Yeah, Titan Quest was absolutely phenomenal.
Well,
For that.
okay, you just, like, Okay, video games are useful.
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah, that led me into researching the stories more in depth and everything like that. But like anytime I would encounter one, I already knew the gist of it because I had seen it in Titan Quest. So I'd be like, oh yeah, this is Jason and the Argonauts. I did this. I played the quest. I went and met that guy, and like I knew about like all the various characters you meet because you're playing it in ancient times. And so the people who made the video game really study the mythology.
Now Brett's mad.
Should have been playing video games to study, buddy. That's right. Yep. I mean, you
You heard it here first, folks.
Did you know that Heracles was taught how to fight by a centaur?
Now he's testing the watcher.
What was that centaur's name? I met him in Titan Quest and helped him get his bow back. That game is badass.
What was his name?
I can't remember.
But if you ever read it, you'd be like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's the guy with the bow.
That's the centaur that taught Heracles. Yeah, totally know who he is.
His bow is purple. Every time I ever bring up any like a Greek mythology or whatever, you're like, oh yeah, that guy does this, and oh, yeah, that's blah, blah, blah. I'm like, how the hell did? There's so many.
How do you know all this?
Don't tell anyone, folks. But I learned it in a video game.
Yeah, it's a fantastic game if you want to learn Greek, Egyptian, and Chinese lore.
That's
It's
cool.
really good. Yeah. Yep.
Well, I have a
can't-
big problem with that too because I never beat any video game except Zelda. It's the only one I ever beat. And I beat Zelda again and again and again
And again,
because they keep coming out with more.
that's right. But it's the same story, but it's different. But it's
Yeah.
the same one. Yeah.
So really, I've only beat one.
He's beaten one game, folks. Zelda. Yeah, but Titan Quest was really good. You can still get it from Steam if anybody's interested. It's available on Steam for very, very cheap. You can get it for like $5 now. on
Oh
Steam.
man,
Yeah.
it's fine.
Yeah, and you can play it, and it just like the first time I played it.
Is it like a bunch of like running around hacking people with swords, or are you actually getting mostly learning about it?
It's most like there's a lot of hacking, but that part's easy. Like you're running around, and it's like it's not complicated to play the game. Like if you play a warrior, if you play a magician, it's a lot harder.
Okay.
Because you're a wuss. As soon as somebody gets up, you're like, you're dead.
I don't
But if
want.
you play
I
a
don't
warrior,
want
it's like raw. You can slaughter everything, and then you walk up to the guy in the village, and he's like, oh, and he tells you this badass story that's in Greek mythology. But you go through all of Greece, and when you get done with Greece, you go into Egypt, and you go all through Egypt, and they tell you all these Egyptian myths and lore and everything. And of course, it's in ancient times, so you're there when the pyramids are new, and it's badass. It's like
That's
cool.
cool.
Yeah, and you get to go down in all the tombs, and and then like at every tomb.
But you're actually taking part in some of the mythological tales.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
kick-ass.
The big myth in Titan Quest is that the gods have been okay, so you know about the Greek mythology about the Titans versus the new pantheon, right? Zeus and his ilk are the newest level of gods. They defeated the Titans.
Okay.
You remember, I think you played some of
God of War.
yes.
Yeah.
Like that.
Never beat it.
Right. It's okay. That was a lot harder than
Got
this.
tired of swinging chains. Just tell me the story.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And yeah, that's the other thing with Titan Quest is you can like set the difficulty level way down, and then it's almost like a walk through the park.
Yeah. I just want the story.
Yeah.
You know?
So you're there, and like the gods have basically been banned. They've been marooned on Olympus, right? And the Titans are taking over by through their magicians, their servants, so you have to basically like go and you have to go and fight to reconnect the gods to the world. That's the point, is to make above as below
yeah.
again. Yeah.
As
So
above,
you end up on
below.
Olympus fighting Zeus's father, Kronos.
Fighting Father Time.
That's right. and he's a titan, so he's got 4 freaking arms and he's like impossible to beat.
You get to like destroy him with a belt sander. Using your own weapons against you.
The sands of time. I'm
I'm gonna grind you down over 1,000,000 years.
Put sand on a belt and I'm going to grind you down. Yeah, and then you get to go into the underworld and you meet Hades, the lord of the underworld, and you talk to Poseidon, and you know, there's all this stuff. It's really cool. And then of course you have to go down the Silk Road into China. You run down the freaking Great Wall and fight off all these monsters on the Great. I mean, dude, it's so badass. Like everywhere you go is an ancient place, and you recognize all the names. You go to Athens, and you go to all the ancient. You go to Thera in Egypt, or Heliopolis, and then you have to go down into the tombs of the kings to find these artifacts to help you do the stuff and everything. It's just badass. It's really cool.
Heck yeah, man.
And they don't tell you that pyramids are tombs.
All right.
The tombs are all in the valley. You know, it's really cool. So it's the lore in that game is fantastic. So that's where I learned a lot of it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Russ.
Yeah.
After all these years.
I kept the secret for so long. It's finally come out.
It's like the first time I've ever asked him that question.
Yeah,
How did you learn all that?
Like, oh yeah, Jason's that guy that went with the Argonauts to find the golden fleece. What? How do you fucking know all this?
That's cool.
I didn't learn about the bananas on Titan Quest though.
What is the deal with the bananas? I'm just gonna have to come clean to that one too.
Okay, so actually I was talking.
After all, this is the Tangent Cube.
That's right.
So let's hear the science.
Somewhat of a tangent. The bananas are, I don't know, to be people pills. So when the, okay, so first of all, what you have to know about bananas, the trees themselves. Okay, so first of all, bananas grow on trees. And they have these enormous bunches, like they grow in these gigantic bunches that like really bow the trees down. But bananas have seeds in them. You'll see that when you're eating a banana, there's these little tiny black dots kind of in the middle of it. Those are the seeds, but they're not viable. You can't grow a banana tree from one of those. They're not actually big enough. They're not anything. They're just like a little remnant of what would have been a seed. So
are they like hybrids or something?
There's some kind of domestic version of some wild plant that I'm not sure. I don't think anybody knows what the wild is anymore. It's gone.
So they grow it from shoots or cuttings?
Yes. It has to be grown from shoots or cuttings. Seeds cannot propagate it, which means that birds can't carry the seeds and plant it everywhere. And yet when the European explorers were exploring...
So they don't... I'm sorry.
When the European explorers were going through the Pacific and they were finding all these deserted islands and they had banana trees on them. And no one has been on the island for whoever knows how many hundreds of years, and yet there's banana trees growing there. Who put them there? Like deserted...
So they don't... Do they flower? They don't flower and are not pollinated through... They don't...
I don't know about that. I just know that the seeds don't propagate the trees. Like the trees themselves cannot be... Like a bird can't come eat part of a banana and then carry the seeds in its poop and poop it on some other island and then grow a banana tree,
Right.
which is how trees and plants usually
Move around, yeah.
Well, banana trees have to be planted with a shoot. You have to like very carefully, like we've been trying to do this at work, right? You have to very carefully root it, get a cutting, right? Put it in something, water, and then get the root to come out very carefully and very carefully plant it, and then it becomes a tree. That has to be done to propagate banana trees, and yet they were found all over the Pacific by European explorers the first time they went there.
Yeah. So the flowering would just be the pollinating of the plants so that they would actually have seeds or grow fruit.
Yeah.
Fertile fruit.
Right.
But the fruit's not fertile anyway.
It's not fertile. I don't know if banana trees have flowers. I don't know that. I just know that like the tree itself requires planting from cuttings, and yet they found them on deserted islands all over the Pacific.
That's crazy.
So, and then the other problem is that we didn't cultivate them. Like they were found as is.
So what do you mean, Watcher? You can grow bananas from bulbs or rhizomes, like tulips. That sounds like more Greek myths to me. What do you mean by that? What is a bulb? What is a rhizome? No, I don't understand tulips.
He says, funny thing is, by genus and species, the banana is a berry. berry.
That's strange. Really weird.
But it makes sense if you think about a wild version being very small and having big seeds in it. It would be like a berry, right? Some kind of strange berry with a skin. But this is the other thing, the other strange thing about banana. Okay, so first of all, keep in mind that it has to be propagated by cuttings. Like he's saying bulbs and rhizomes. Like in other words, like tulips, you can't use seeds to propagate them. You have to make cuttings. Okay. The other thing about bananas is that they are perfectly nutritious for humans. Or I guess what you would say is hominids. Like this is one of the reasons why the ape species all love them, because they're perfectly nutritious. Like you get, like no one would want to do this, but you could survive for your entire life eating nothing but bananas and drinking water. You would be you would not have any malnutrition. You would not have. Oh, okay, so what's he saying here? Like you have to dig up the root structure, harvest a bulb, and take it somewhere else to plant it.
And cultivate it. So I mean, in a disaster, you know, some upheaval, you could imagine like roots being carried across oceans and.
Yeah, that's true, but you know how you have to cultivate stuff.
Yeah.
Like it could be carried across. But
I'm not saying it seems highly unlikely that it would be
all over the Pacific.
Right.
Yeah. Unless there was like a moo, right? Like this is the thing. The idea is that you get down to is like it used to have seeds that were viable. Like you can tell that it used to be a seeding plant. It's got seeds in it. They're just not worth anything anymore. So somebody domesticated the plant, just like we were talking about in like one of the second episode or something like that, where we were talking about like the rye grasses that are in the Middle East, that somebody has taken those with these little tiny things on them that you can't eat and made them into these gigantic, beautiful grains of rice, you know, these huge, where they make this, and that process is not understandable because you can't go from hunter-gatherer to the guy that does farming and then think to yourself that in I'm going to plant this field with this grass, and then my sons are going to plant this field with more of this grass, and then like my great-great-grandson is going to have food. Like that doesn't work.
Right.
Somebody had to do some real science on these things to get them to be viable food very quickly, or else it wouldn't be worth doing, right?
Right. It wouldn't be worth planting field.
Right. Like the
year after year after year when you can't eat it for like 3 or 4 generations.
Exactly. Like people always compare the domestication of certain types of crop plants with the domestication, like with the way people have done with dogs, where they have like bred them and to get these strange species over hundreds of years. But if you're eating this stuff and it's your source of food, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
So
farming is a whole lot of work.
Right.
Already.
And you're not going to be planting whole massive fields of something you can't eat. Unless it's better for something.
And even if they did, you would have to admit that they knew they were going to be able to get something they could eat.
Right. For a while. That it wasn't just a guessing game. Yeah. Like the thing about dogs, the reason why that analogy falls apart is because dogs were there was like most of that breeding happened with the royals. These people that had all this free time and they didn't have to do any planting and digging for food and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so they were just playing with these species of dogs and breeding them for racing or fighting or as toys or whatever. Right? Well, no one has time to do that with food.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like people do like have gardens, like flowering gardens or whatever.
Unless you're a highly advanced civilization that already has food.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. That's what I mean. So like, when we're coming out of the Pacific and there's all these islands that are not inhabited and that have zero signs of ever having been inhabited, and yet there's banana plants all over them. Right.
Yeah, something weird is going on.
Something strange is going on. And it implies, and okay, that combined with the fact that, wait, go ahead.
I figured it out. Okay, so the banana tree grows its bananas, right? The first cultivated banana tree.
Yeah.
And then no one picked them. And so the bananas fell off, and then the banana tree slipped.
And the roots came out.
And the roots came out, and it went down the mountain. No, that's not.
Hoist by its own petard.
I'll keep thinking.
Slipped on its own banana peel.
I had to throw that one in there.
Nobody picked the bananas, and then they fell down, and the tree slipped.
That's right.
And that made the roots come out, and the bulbs rolled down the hill, and they were planted all over the
It
place.
slipped all the way to another island.
They do kind of look like little canoes. Anyway, So that fact, the fact that they were found all over the Pacific on deserted islands, the fact that they have obviously been cultivated from some long-lost wild plant that no longer exists, and the fact that they are perfectly nutritious for people, unlike any other food on the planet. Like, there's no other food on the planet that does this. There's nothing else in the world that you can say you can eat just this and only this for your entire life, and you'll be bored culinarily wise, but you'll be okay. Right?
Yeah.
It'll be very boring in terms of eating. You'll be like, time to eat bananas again. But you'll be perfectly healthy.
I've heard of people doing that, actually, like these weird
Banana fasts.
cleanses or whatever,
Yeah.
where they just eat nothing but bananas.
Right.
Yeah.
There's nothing else that's like that.
So
Now think
there is no existing precursor plant.
not that I
to the
know
banana?
of, and I've looked for it.
Now there is the plantain.
Yeah.
Right? That's like a very large banana.
Yeah, it's another version of the plant.
And does that one have the same situation?
I don't think so. Maybe it does. I just know bananas in general. Like maybe a plantain is a version of a banana,
Yeah.
right?
But then also like the cultivated grains. I think we talked about this before. Do we have their
There are
previous existing?
Yeah, so like around Göbekli Tepe, there are wild grasses that they could match with some of today's modern grains.
Oh, wow.
But only a few. Like they don't know where, like corn is maize or whatever it's called.
Right.
The original name maize. It's not really known. Like we have those little baby corns, but those are also a cultivated crop.
Yeah.
People are always like, well, they're baby corns. Or like, no, I'm like, no, those are not the original.
Stand down or die.
But I've also heard about corn that if left alone, it would actually die out
Yeah.
very quickly because there's so many seeds and it's so vigorous
Yeah.
that it would like
It would-
say like we all
It would overpropagate.
vanished. Yeah, it would and then it would deplete the soil wherever it
soil,
was,
die.
and then they would all die.
Right.
Now I guess that wouldn't mean that there wouldn't be seeds left behind that might get.
Right. Remember that a lot of the Indian mounds here, this is one of the most awesome things to me. The Indian mounds here that were dug up, and they found giant skeletons in them with these jars that had ancient corn seeds in them. And they gave them out to the farmers in the area, and the farmers started planting those, and they were like, holy shit, oh, these are awesome. And then they started using those. So, like, the corn that the Americas uses to feed the whole world comes from ancient giants. Like, I love that, dude. Like, that we stopped using, like, so when we got here, the natives were giving people corn seeds, right? Some of them had
Yeah.
some, and they probably got them from the mounds too.
Yeah.
I mean, like, why else? I mean, these, like,
That's one of the things that's always blown me away. I can't
why?
remember if
Yeah,
we
they're
haven't-
nomadic.
We haven't talked about this before, but like the settlers get here and they're doing whatever they're doing, trying to make food and whatever, and they're talking with the natives. And we didn't show up and see massive cornfields.
Right. And the natives are generally nomadic, like hunter-gatherers,
Right,
and
but
yet they have these crop
Somebody
seeds.
comes over and is like, "Oh, I see you guys are doing something with the ground there that we probably have cave paintings of or something. I think you should try these."
Yeah.
Like, how did that work? Did they have their own cultivated fields of corn?
Some native cultures were sedentary, like they stayed in the same place and cultivated, but like the ones that we met, the coastal ones were not. They went up and down
so
the
they,
coast.
they probably just traded them and brought them to us from.
And I bet you they got their original seeds from. Anyway, I just know that a lot of the giant stories where they're digging in the mounds, they find the giant skeleton, and next to him, or like associated with his burial or her burial, whatever, or it's two people, are these jars. And in some of the jars are seeds, and they plant the seeds, and they make these amazing corn plants. And the farmers are like, hell yeah, these are about us, and that's what they use. And then it says they propagated them to all the farmers in the town, and because they grew so much better than the ones that they were using at the time.
That's awesome.
Right. So it's like we're like, I love that connection that like these ancient giants buried themselves with their seeds for a corn that they had obviously in some previous higher civilization had cultivated into something awesome.
Yeah.
Buried themselves with it, and then we come over here, people come over here and then find those and then start planting them, find out they're way better than any crop that they've got, and they start using them, and now that's what we eat. Like, it's a freaking badass.
That's awesome. So basically, somewhere along the line, that probably happened with bananas. Except whoever designed bananas was like, we just need one plant. We don't have time for culinary arts.
Well, we weren't eating the seeds in bananas. Corn, you're kind of right. You're sort of eating the.
Yeah.
So
No,
it's
I
like,
just meant like whoever designed the bananas were just like,
oh, we don't want to cook it.
yeah, it's just one plant. There's no need for anything else. We don't have time. We're doing science here.
Yeah. That's right. So, the fact that it's that like basically what it comes down to with the bananas is that
Prior to the giants, the only viable corn was baby corn. We
Now-
have giant corn.
that's right. We eat Nephcorn.
We eat the giant version.
The giants looked at that baby corn and were like, no. I'm like, yeah, I need giant corn. So, the idea with the bananas is that it's one of the artifacts of the previous civilization.
Yeah.
The reason why it's all over the Pacific is because they were all over the Pacific.
And also, maybe the sea levels were lower too. So
Right, so there's probably ruins below the islands, or like on the islands below the water where those banana plants were found, right? But what I'm getting at is like Easter Island. I always view Easter Island as this like gas station in the middle of nowhere, right, for this ancient civilization.
Yeah.
Because they were seafarers, and when you're crossing the Pacific, like if you're doing it the right way, the currents will take you straight to Easter Island. If you're doing it the right way.
Huh.
Okay. So if you get there, you're gonna want to reprovision. It's kind of a big island. Right, so you're going to want to reprovision or whatever, and so you put gas station attendants there to kind of grow stuff, so that when you land, you can reprovision your ship, and you can get stuff that you need, that you're, running low on or whatever. But think about the fact that all these deserted islands all over the Pacific were planted with the perfect food. So if you're shipwrecked and you happen to end up on one of those islands, you can survive for as long as necessary until somebody can find you on those banana plants. And you don't have to climb along a giant coconut tree and freaking risk dying trying to get coconuts down, and then get down there and find out you have no way to open it because you don't have any tools. And bananas, like,
if you're gonna go glad in a sailboat, do it in the Pacific.
right? There's bananas everywhere, and you can live on them forever.
And with that, we shall take our second break.
Bananas.
They're like little yellow snakes.
Welcome back to a relentless pursuit of arrowheads here at Snake Rose.
What?
Second half of the second hour. I'm wearing my arrowhead hunting mask.
You're making me look bad.
This is my mask. I'm going to use it to go hunt arrowheads. You guys can understand me, right?
Anyway, we have these new masks that we were going to use to go get lost and die. But not from histoplasmosis.
That's right.
So I had to try it on and try to talk to it. Because we're gonna have to talk to each other for for the weekend. We're gonna be talking to each other like that. These sounding like Kyle's sub-vocalization all the time. So anyway, I said a relentless pursuit of arrowheads. That's what I said.
Oh, okay.
Behind these, steel Pentakeep microphones.
All right.
So we got a little bit more on the bananas. Brett, the watcher, found out some great information. First of all, they are berry tubers that grow on trees in herb gardens. Wait. The plant is an herb that looks like a tree. The banana itself is a berry. The roots are tubers. That's a hybrid, I think.
Yeah. Apparently, it's a hybrid between the plantain and some other banana-like thing
That's
is
gross.
full of seeds and not really edible.
Yeah. So, what's not explained is how they were all over the Pacific when the Europeans were first exploring it. And who hybridized them. Because we basically, what you would call the developed world, Europe and England, found them as is.
Yeah.
And according to the, uniformitarian slash isolationist standard model of history, no other culture was able to do stuff like hybridize plants. So.
Yeah. And now we hybridize plants, and typically, we'll do grafting and stuff onto other roots.
Yeah.
And those plants, don't have seeds, so table grapes and stuff.
Right. The other, and again, I always bring back up the fact that they're like perfectly nutritious. Like Brett was looking up the nutrition or whatever, and he was saying that they're actually, the fruit itself of banana is lacking in what did you say, that certain, you can come on and say it, certain large starches, what was it, proteins?
Yeah, it was large starches and protein.
Yeah.
But your body can convert what's there into it. And then you told me the crazy thing about how Indians eat bananas, and my mind was blown.
Yeah, so in India they will consume the central fruit, and then they'll turn around with the peel, and they'll peel all those stringy things off the inside until you get down to the actual skin, which is this thick, hard, like greenish yellow thing, and then they eat those strings like noodles, and those contain the rest of the stuff that you need, the proteins and the starches. So it is a perfect people pill made by the Anunnaki. People pill so that they can hurl humans. I mean, think about it. You could send armies with bananas and people pills, right? Feed everybody with those things. If you are running a slave race, if you're a Nepha running a slave race, you build a perfect food for them, like we make dog food.
Yeah. And you can cultivate it in a year, and it's got fully developed fruit.
Right.
In 1 year, from planting the tube.
Right.
Or the bulb. Or whatever.
Right. And it's I don't remember. Did you look up, Brett? Did you look up how vigorous they are? Do they take over, or do they need cultivating? Do they need very careful watching?
They don't do the thing that some plants do, like where you can't grow anything else with them. Like if you plant something else, it'll overtake it. But they're supposedly pretty hardy. Once they're in the ground, it's just like, throw some water on there, and 9 months you'll have superfood.
Right. So they grow very quickly. They're very sturdy and hardy. They're difficult to kill. Tarantulas like them. But so you can see why whoever was creating it would make it not able to propagate itself, right? And this is again like going back to Sitchin and the sort of the Anunnaki story that he tells with the problem with reproduction, right? The thing about humans, and like they didn't want them to be able to reproduce on their own because they would spread out everywhere. They'd be everywhere. They're going to take over the whole planet. And so Enlil gets really pissed off when Enki gives them the ability to reproduce. Well, you have the same thinking, I think. I see the same style of thinking in the banana plant, that it is something that's badass, but you don't want it to be able to reproduce itself because it'll be fucking everywhere. So they restrict its own reproduction ability by making its seeds non-viable, and thereby control precisely the reproductive ability of the plant itself.
Yeah. I mean, that's common of a hybrid, though, that the seeds are not viable.
Yeah, but there are old hybrids that have viable seeds. Somebody used to be able
humans.
Yeah. Somebody used to be able to make hybrids that could
and I don't know, they may be able to do that today, but most of the hybrids that we make are seedless. Like the seeds are not viable. They're soft and I mean, there's still seeds in seedless grapes, but they taste just like the rest of the grape.
Right.
They don't have husks or whatever.
Yeah. They practically, you can't tell.
Yeah, same with the seedless watermelons. They're in there, but they're just really soft and not
they're not real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, this is just a question that I have, throw it out there for you snake pros. Like if, say, all humans were to just cease cultivating crops, would all of our hybrid species die out? Like, we have all these hybrid trees, like the fruit trees, and the fruit will not grow new trees. So how likely is it?
No, life will find a way.
Right. But how likely is it that tree is gonna like fall over green and one of its branches stab into another tree and grow a new one without killing the one that fell over or whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it just, I can't, it's hard to imagine all of these trees that we've cultivated.
I see what you mean.
Trees and plants that are hybrids that can't, they don't have seeds that will reproduce themselves. The only way to reproduce them is to take a cutting
Yeah.
and to put it into a rootstock or to root it,
Yeah.
like you put it in a rooting hormone or something.
Right.
So
Has to be
like
done in a controlled environment.
The tree's branch would literally have to break off and stab into the ground, and the conditions be just perfect
Right.
for that branch to actually root. And it's like, it doesn't seem likely that that's going to happen very often or often enough to continue that
cannot do
species.
that.
species
So,
for thousands
so is this
of years.
connected to the bananas? Are you talking about like?
Yeah.
why-
So what I'm saying is, like, 1,000 years after humans stopped cultivating their hybrid plants,
Right.
are we going to have any more of those hybrid plants left over?
Oh yeah.
Still growing?
Probably not.
Unless there's a tree that never died for 1,000 years that's still
Yeah. The
right,
tree
but-
of
right.
life.
So like there are places where, you know, we've planted, say, hybrid trees that may not need irrigation. They may not need,
Yeah.
you know, fungicides and other. They may be natural to that environment.
Right. But after 1,000 years, you're pushing it. You're
Yeah.
on a perfect environment.
Yeah, exactly. And so it seems extremely unlikely that you would just roll up to a deserted island and see a whole bunch of hybrid.
Left over from from thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that.
I mean, they might survive a little while and by chance reproduce through, you know, a green stem being put in the ground and just being the right conditions.
So what
to
you're
root.
pointing to is a later civilization did this, not the one that ended the ice age or whatever. Is what you're talking about.
No, I'm just saying that, however, if it obviously it was designed to be hardy enough,
Yeah.
or it was designed in a way that it would survive.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, maybe not.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just seems like whatever. I mean,
Well,
obviously
there's
it was
multi-
there, so
yeah.
it was designed to do that.
There's multiple answers. Like, possible is that we have that not us here at Snake Bros, but like that standard model has just grossly underestimated the other civilizations around the world for the previous 6,000 years, and that they could have been cultivating the bananas or whatever.
Yeah.
I tend to think that they came from a very ancient, unknown, advanced civilization, but it's very possible that other native cultures have moved around in there and sort of like kept it going, because we know that there were bananas on places where people lived too, and they
Yeah,
knew
yeah.
about them and cultivated them. What Standard Model doesn't believe is that those native civilizations that we found in their coastal grass huts and butt flaps versions could get to those islands.
Right. I guess my point really is like, how many other hybrid plants are growing on deserted islands?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like
None.
bananas,
And
probably in the top very few.
that's right. Bananas are probably in the top one. But there's always been that question of like, what was funny about the bananas in particular is that there was no way for them to get there. But like, you know, I can't believe I've forgotten his name. The guy who invented evolution. What's his name? Darwin. Like, one of the questions he was asking about the Galapagos Islands was those miniature elephants, right? Like,
Yeah.
how are these here? What do we have here? How do we have an elephant can't swim out here, right? So he imagined a side by side evolving of a similar shape, but that the elephants on the Galapagos were just tiny because the island wouldn't serve a large animal.
Yeah.
But that the evolutionary process, and remember that he's imagining a world that hadn't gone through massive cataclysms.
Right.
So the evolutionary process carried this animal up into its current state that matched that of a very large animal that we already knew of, but it was tiny because it had evolved in a place where there was very few resources.
Yeah.
So people have always been looking at these deserted islands or these isolated islands in the middle of these oceans and wondering, well, where did these plants even come from in the first place, right? You know, and then you find out about migrating birds, but still, you have to look at, like, there are still questions. I can't, excuse me. I can't remember some of them, but there are very good questions about how certain species ended up in certain places. and how they can't be there. Like, you know, like a good example that it doesn't have to do with islands, but is the seahorses in Lake Titicaca. Like, how did those get there? You know,
or the blind albino fish down in like the Devil's Hole and at the bottom. What is it called? The desert there in the middle of the United States.
Oh yeah, the Dust Bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's like in the lowest part, the lowest elevation in the entire North American continent.
Yeah.
Is down in this bowl, and it's like far below sea level.
Yeah.
And then somewhere in the middle there is just this hole in the ground, and there's a cave that goes down there, and there's water in it.
Yeah.
And there's a species of blind albino fish.
Right, and they're practically transparent. I mean, they
Right.
call them albinos, but they're almost clear. Yeah. Some of them are.
How did they get there?
Yeah. Why did they get there? Like the fish in the Longview Grottos. How did they get there, and where did they go?
Yeah, Death Valley, Badwater Basin.
Yeah. There's questions on that. And like, okay, the northern pike in all the lakes up in Canada. Those enormous, massive fish. Like, well, that was under 2 miles of ice not very long ago. There weren't any lakes up there. Where in the hell did all those fish come
I
from?
cannot do that.
They're not connected to oceans.
Yeah.
They rained out of the sky. Damn it.
Okay, so same for banana tubes.
Hey, that's totally possible. Hybrid banana tubers rain out of the sky and grow herbs on which grow berries.
That we now call people kills.
I don't have to be the pills. Great for hurling humans. Okay, so let's move to this discussion that we were having with our friends Archer and Griffin about E equals MC squared and all that stuff.
Oh yeah.
Because like I think your point is fantastic about the units. Like units are very important when you're doing, I mean, just algebraic math. You have to pay attention to the units, and you're moving them around, you know, and you're converting them. Like if you're multiplying this kind of unit times that kind of unit connected to the numbers, whatever, you can get some other kind of unit sometimes, right?
Yeah.
But you have to pay attention to the unit so that your answer makes sense.
Yeah.
And you're pointing out that E equals mc squared. Well, the c squared is, c means the speed of light, which is a velocity, which is distance over time. And you're saying what the f is that squared?
Yeah.
How do you square distance over time?
How do you multiply distance over time times
Distance over time. What do you get? And
So-
yeah, go ahead.
I was thinking about multiplication, or just the simplest multiplication in terms of what it does, I guess you would say. Like, if you're talking about dimensions, you multiply the distance of, or the length of a line times itself, and then you get an area. So it's like the multiplication or the squaring of a number gives you a new dimension.
Right.
So then you take the area and you multiply it times another number, and then you get another dimension. You get a
third
three-dimensional
dimension,
object. You get volume.
Yeah.
So if you multiply volume times the number, do you get time? You know, like it was just interesting how multiplication can do this. Like that kind of struck me. So then I started thinking about that. Like when you're squaring something, it's like you're adding a dimension,
Right.
to whatever that number is.
Yeah.
Whatever that unit or whatever measurement is. So
Right. So if you got
multiplying
2
the
feet,
speed of light.
you have 2 feet, and then you multiply that by 2 feet, you get 2 feet squared.
Right.
And you multiply that by 2
Right,
feet,
you get-
and you get 2 foot cubed.
Right.
So what is c squared?
Right. The speed of light
Squared.
So distance over time. Like first of all, how do you multiply time times itself?
What is time is the first question.
That's right. We're already talking about possibly, if we want to consider it the fourth dimension. We don't really know how to measure it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
I mean, we do, but it's
a
like we
weird
have
type
this-
of measuring.
sand. We
Yeah.
use sand.
It's a strange type of measuring. So yeah,
You can't square. Yeah.
that was just really strange to me. Like the speed of light as a single thing and then squaring it.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
I can't get that.
And I'm pointing out that in algebraic, like, manipulations, you have to pay attention to the units. So if you have E is going to be in some kind of unit. Your energy is going to be, like BTUs or kilopascals or newtons or whatever, joules. Right?
Calories.
Calories. Calories. It's an unnecessary expenditure of calories. And then you have M, which is mass. So you're going to do that's grams, pounds, right? Yeah. Which is weight, but those aren't the same.
Right.
But that's how we measure mass because we're in 1G all the time. So we correlate those two things, but they're not the same. And like often, if you're watching YouTube videos on these things, they will like mix them up all the time. Like Walter Cohen talks about that, how they like he's like you're watching a physics thing, and like within the first 2 minutes, the physicists confuse mass and weight.
Yeah.
Weight is how much the pull of gravity is acting on the mass of something.
Yeah.
But because our gravity well is always the same, we correlate the two things and we think they're the same thing, but they're not. But anyway, 1 gram is 1 gram in space or on Earth. But it doesn't weigh 1 gram. It just is 1 gram.
Yeah.
If you're in space, it weighs nothing. When you're down on Earth, it weighs 1 gram, but it's also 1 gram. And it is 1 gram in space, but it weighs nothing. But C, being a velocity, V equals D over T.
Yeah.
Velocity equals distance over time. Right, so you have to pay attention to that. So V squared, what is V squared? What's the square of a velocity?
Yeah, I have no idea.
Right? Well, I can imagine the square of a gram. You can like imagine just sort of like having, much more mass, right? You can have it, imagine squaring energy. You can have much more energy, right? Multiplying the energy by itself or multiplying the weight by itself. But when you get distance and time, I can imagine squaring distance even.
Yeah.
I just get an area if I do that, right?
Yes.
'Cause distance is a line through space, so if I square that, I get an area. But time can't be squared.
Right. Or you just it's still linear if you're just talking about a length of time. Right? It doesn't. So it's like, I don't know. Yeah.
So what I was pointing out when we were talking about this is that when you're doing the algebraic manipulation, you're moving these things, moving the variables around, that you still have to pay attention to the units. And then when you're solving for something, you have to pay attention to the units, right?
Yeah.
But like, how do you pay attention to the units when you're looking over here at this t squared? Like, you're like, I don't know what that means. What do I do with that thing? And it's under V or D. So you got distance squared divided by time squared or over, so you're like, what do you even do with that? So that's a good point. Like the E equals MC squared equation, which is used everywhere, which is like a fundamental of physics now, has this unit problem.
Yeah. And it does it literally mean like to square the time? Like if the time was 1 or 2 minutes, that it's 4 minutes?
I don't know.
2 minutes times 2 minutes
equals 4 minutes?
Because I know. It's like,
yeah. Is 2 minutes times 6 minutes? 6 minutes equals 12 minutes? Like,
I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me, but
12 minutes squared. Because that's what it would be. Like if I had 2 feet times 2 feet, it would be 2 foot. It would be 4 foot squared, right?
Yeah.
But if I have like 2 minutes times 2 minutes, do I have 4 minutes squared? What does that mean?
Right. That's what I'm saying. Because when you get 2 feet squared, you can say I have 4 square feet.
Yeah.
And then I don't know. It just it doesn't make any sense to me. But I was also in that whole thought process, like thinking about the idea again that the speed of light is a constant. So the whole theory of relativity is based on this idea that the speed of light is constant, and yet we know that it's not. Refraction is the most basic proof that it is not a constant.
Right.
So I don't know if they're considering, or if the idea is that it's a constant somewhere under certain conditions.
Yeah.
So it just seems like the fact that light, or the speed of light, the velocity of light can be variable, then you can't consider that your constant in the equation.
Right.
And that seems like it would just make the whole...
Like, then everything is a
the
variable.
idea, everything is a variable. Like
Yeah.
if time can be a variable, and space can be a variable, and the speed of light can also be a variable.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. And like that.
I mean, in any case, how can you have something that constantly goes a certain distance over a certain time when that distance is variable? Doesn't make any sense.
Right, and that distance is variable by something else we don't understand, gravity.
Yeah.
And light gets bent by gravity because space is being bent by it, technically, right?
Yeah.
We've talked about this a long time ago on one of the first shows, like in the first 10, I think. We talked about how the idea of constants comes from the steady state theory.
Yeah.
And they kind of carried over because they make the math easy, right? So you have steady state theory universe, which says that the universe is infinite. It doesn't have a beginning or an end, right? And so in that universe, like ignoring the problems with it right now, like imagining a steady state universe that has no beginning or no end, you could imagine that constants make sense because the universe itself is constant. You see what I'm saying? So there's a philosophical understanding there, like if you have this steady state theory that says the universe is and always has been and always will be, then you can also have physical constants. Okay? They make sense. But in a like vastly evolving universe such as the Big Bang, which is the standard model of of cosmology now, the idea of constants is ridiculous because we start with none. Like we know that there is a point at which constants cease to be constant. So there's no like theoretical foundation for implying that they are constant now because we know that at some point they came to be. You see what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense.
But the steady state theory sort of fell apart slowly. It was like disproved in multiple ways. One of them being like the problem of light. Like the problem is that if the universe is infinite and it has always been there, then we should look up into a white night sky because there has been a star in every possible place. There would be no blackness because there would have been a star in every possible spot in the sky, and it would just be bright white all the time. And no life would be possible because you would be dead. Like, that's too much light. It would be heavy gamma radiation and everything. There would be an infinite number of supernovas and an infinite number of quasars, and just like we would all be dead because the radiation would be so intense from an infinite universe, right? So like that's one of the ways that the steady state like fell out of favor, was that when people realized like, wait a minute, it can't be infinite because we should look out there and see an infinite number of everything. So but the problem is that the idea of constants from the steady state theory carried over into the math and the cosmology of the Big Bang theory, which is an evolving universe, which shouldn't have constants, shouldn't have the idea of constants. It should be the idea of, at the very least, of something evolving, right? That the constants, that these things we call constants, or these fundamental building blocks of the universe, have been changing with the universe over time, and are in flux all the time, and are not constant. Now, relative to our lifetimes, we might be able to look at them as constant, that the speed of light is roughly x, and it's going to stay that way, you know, because the universe changes very slowly. It's evolving, but it's a very slow evolution relative to our lifespans.
Yeah, because I think even like the speed of sound is considered a constant when you're dealing with
1 atmosphere.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with that, you know, you can, I guess, doing the math. I never did the math, folks.
Right.
So
but the speed of sound is different in 1 atmosphere that's very dry versus 1 atmosphere that's very humid. It's totally different.
Yeah.
It'll change it, right? And so light should be understood the same way. And like all kinds of physical constants, like the rate of decay of radioactive stuff, the fine structure constant, 1/137 that nobody understands.
Yeah.
Like all those things are probably not constants. They have been evolving if the Big Bang theory is correct, which it may not be.
Yeah. So that video that I was watching, I can't remember I sent y'all a link in the conversation, and it was it had Halton Arp.
Yeah.
It was talking about the strange galaxies or whatever.
Yes. The ARP. By the way, folks, you can go and look these up on NASA's website. They have the whole catalog of ARP galaxies. They're called ARP. It's ARP 560M43, whatever. They're all numbered. And every single picture is of a weird set of galaxies that are very strange.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic set of space pictures. In space.
Yeah, so in the video they discuss the problem with the Big Bang universe idea.
Yeah.
This is weird because what you're bringing up makes more sense. But at the time I was watching the video, I was like, "Oh, that makes sense."
Yeah.
And they were talking about the idea that the standard model now is this Big Bang thing, and they're saying no, it's more likely that the universe is infinite. There was no beginning. There is no end.
So there's a new steady state theory that's trying to be propagated by people, and they have this idea of tired light. That's what I was going to talk about.
Okay.
Tired light, meaning that we won't see a white sky because light actually fizzes out over long distances. It diffuses to the point where it can't be seen.
Okay.
I don't really know what that means. I'm not sure. But to me, most of the cosmology, or most of the observations, do appear to show, well, actually I can't say that because we don't know about the redshift, so I can't say that. I was going to say they appear to show everything sort of expanding outwards, but that's not really necessarily true.
Yeah, that was the other thing, that the whole idea of redshift being a Doppler effect, so that whatever body is redshifted, that body is traveling far away from us, and that like high levels of redshift
Imply that it's very
imply
far
that,
away.
yeah, it's extremely far away, and
Yes.
that I don't understand really how they get there by saying like, well, it's accelerating because the further away it is, the more redshifted it is. So that must
has
be
nothing to do with I'm sorry. That has nothing to do with the acceleration. The acceleration is a separate deal. The redshift is caused by the velocity, right?
Yeah.
And the idea in an expanding universe is that the farther away something is, the faster it's expanding away from us, just
Right.
because of its distance, like a balloon that's getting blown up. All the parts of the balloon are moving away from all the other parts. When the two parts are close to each other, they're moving away from each other, but kind of slowly. If they're far apart from each other on the balloon, then they're moving away from each other very quickly. So the distance from each other on the surface of the balloon denotes the velocity of travel away from any other given part. Right?
So the further away it is, the faster.
The higher the
away
redshift because of just the expansion.
Faster
but
away
then
it's moving.
Right. Then they found out that not only is that happening, but there's also an acceleration. That everything is not only moving away from us at certain velocities based on their distance, but they're also accelerating, which implies that the expansion effect isn't caused by the initial Big Bang, but it is continuing. Something is continuing to accelerate everything away.
Yeah.
And they're also basing that on reading the redshift, that the redshift is redshifting.
Yeah, exactly. So they measure the redshift of something, and then shortly thereafter, they measure it again, and it's more.
And it's more, yeah.
And so they're thinking it's speeding up.
It's accelerating away, yeah.
But then Halton Arp's whole deal, like one of the big problems with it was there's basically a galaxy that they viewed, and in front of it is a quasar, which is highly redshifted, and the galaxy behind the quasar is not nearly as redshifted as the quasar. So it's and there's a whole bunch, like there's multiple galaxies that he found that have these strange properties, like they're connected. Like one galaxy looks to be next to a smaller galaxy. The small galaxy is highly redshifted, so they're thinking it's way, way far away. And the big galaxy is not redshifted very much, so they think it's close. In other words, even though they look like they're next to each other, the little one is way freaking far away. But then, like, Halton Arp found that there's actually a filament of light and materials that are actually connecting it to the little one that's next to it. So it's actually
the big galaxy is connected to the little galaxy by a filament of matter.
Right.
Yeah.
And plasma.
And
so that it can't be, they can't be ridiculous distances away from each other,
right,
because they're connected by this filament.
Yeah, that little galaxy can't be like 2 billion light years farther out than the big one. That's too far. That's too much.
Right. So that's where the whole redshift thing sort of falls apart. Like it's not really a good way to measure the distance. And you were talking about how they base this idea of whether or not it's redshifted on a specific type of star.
Yeah, main sequence star. Yeah, so, and this is, so what we're getting into is we're digging into a big stack of assumptions, right? So main sequence stars, the theory is that these stars are all of roughly the same mass. Like, in other words, okay, so let's start from here. We see a bunch of them in our galaxy. They're close to us. Okay, so we see a bunch of these quote-unquote main sequence stars in our galaxy.
Yes.
They're roughly the same mass. That means they have roughly the same
Welcome
physical
back.
properties,
Filthy rich
slight
yet?
differences, but they're close enough to each other to where their
Yes.
own native gravity and their own native fusion or whatever is causing their process is resulting in the same amount of light because they have the same mass and the same energy and so on and so forth. So they call them main sequence stars, and they basically view them as think of it as a 60-watt filament light bulb. They all look the same. They've come out of a factory, and you turn millions of them all on, and they all put out the same wavelengths no matter what, okay, with very little variation. Now, if you take all those 60-watt filament light bulbs and you scatter them all over the universe, and some of them are moving far away from you very quickly and some of them are not, since you know their initial wavelengths because they're all but roughly the same, you can look at the ones that are moving very quickly away and see how redshifted they are, and you can calculate that redshift because you know what they should look like.
Yep.
Okay, so this is how they calculate redshift. They look at main sequence star light,
Yes. Hello?
and they, in any given galaxy or whatever, most of its light's going to be from main sequence stars. So they look at these stars, they look at the light, they see how redshifted it is relative to what they think it should be. This is the problem.
Yeah. So when they go and look at a star and it's redshifted, how do they know
That it's not just that
that
color.
that it's what data gives them the determination that it is one of these standard stars?
That I don't know.
That doesn't make any sense, but I'm sure there's a reason for it.
Yeah, it's mass spectrography or whatever.
Spectrography.
Yeah, it's a friggin' spectrometer. Well, the other problem is that between us and all this other stuff is all this unknown dust,
Yeah.
dark dust that we can't see, hydrogen clouds that we can't like nebulas are everywhere, but if they're not lit up by stars very near them to make them these beautiful blue and red things that we see pictures of, then they're just black clouds that we can't see. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're looking at the wavelengths of light coming to you, and if you could be missing whole bands of light because it's been absorbed by some material in between us and it,
Yeah.
right? So you have all that kind of stuff going on, and if that stuff is moving towards or away from you,
Right.
It's changing
if
the
a
band.
nova is actually moving.
yeah, it's changing the band that it's going to be absorbing, or it looks like it is,
Yeah.
right? It's actually not, but it looks like it is relative to us because of the velocity towards or away from, so on and so forth. So you end up with this very complicated problem, and the idea is like, can we work back to what the actual wavelength of this light originally was before, like when it was emitted from that place that it was emitted from?
Yes.
And that's a giant stack of assumptions that they're making based on a bunch of physics that are also based on stacks of assumptions that are also based on constants
Yeah.
that come from the steady state universe theory that has long been debunked.
There's something about the E equals MC squared thing, the theory of relativity, to me that makes, if it's true, it makes the universe, and I guess this doesn't really matter. This is just about my feelings, right? This isn't about science. But there's something about it that just doesn't seem to fit
Right.
in the way the observable universe.
You're talking about the relativity part.
The beauty of the observable universe, like
Yeah.
the world around me,
Yeah.
is like the way things seem to work in nature is so beautiful, and
Yeah.
it's like badass. And like the relativity part of that theory
Right.
is just it twists it all up and just screws everything up, and it doesn't make, it's like,
Yeah.
like what?
Yeah.
It just somehow it doesn't fit, and that's not
Yes. Hello?
I'm not making that statement because of evidence or anything like that. It's all just like, it just does not seem to fit, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know why.
So for people who don't, oh wait, we need to take a break.
Oh yeah.
We'll come back and I'll give this like mental model for understanding the standard model of relativity. It's pretty clear
Yeah.
for people that don't know what it like. It's a good way to visualize it. In other words, so we'll come back after this last break and we'll give you that, and then we'll finish out this discussion on how the total standard model is bullshit.
It's all snakes.
And we're back from across the sands of time to the science cube of perpetual tangents. And behind this, the purple Snake Bros arrowhead digging mask.
Oh yeah, this is a great intro machine.
That's right.
So what are we going to talk about?
These masks are great.
All intros will now be done with arrowhead digging masks.
That's right.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen.
So we were going on about redshift and all that stuff, and
Yeah, well, you
Relativity.
were gonna talk about relativity. I just think that there's just something about it that doesn't sit well with me.
it's wrong.
It just seems
Yeah.
out of sorts.
Yeah.
But actually, when I first learned about it, and you actually gave me a mental picture of how it worked, it was really badass to understand it.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't seem to fit
Right.
for some reason.
Yeah, I agree. And like what you were saying during the break about, we were talking about how if E equals MC squared were all variables, that nothing was a constant.
Yeah.
That would make a lot more
Or
sense,
die.
and that everything else wouldn't be twisting and bending everywhere in every
Yeah.
direction, trying to fit C being the constant.
Yeah.
Which is what's happening when you make C into a constant. Everything else, like curves and twists
Yeah.
and everything, trying to fit it.
It seems like you should use it as a constant when necessary.
Right.
When you're trying, when you're in a local environment and you're trying to get something else, right? You're trying to get some other information.
Right. Like anything else you do in science, you measure something, and then you use that measurement to do your calculations.
Yeah.
Right. Now you may need to measure it again later to see if it's the same, but
like-
for the time you say, okay, here's C for now, so let me make this measurement.
Right.
Or
It's like
let me make this.
It's like if you were trying to study the energy in a resonating air tank
Yeah.
while it was being pressurized,
Yeah.
and you're using the
You
speed
would
of
measure-
sound as a constant,
Yeah. You would screw yourself.
you would be like, oh, well, the tank's getting
Huge.
massive, or like, or it's actually shrinking because
Yeah.
the sound's going faster and faster as the pressure increases.
Yeah,
right?
that's
You're
right.
like, you're trying to measure the resonance of the tank, and you're like, man, the tank is getting smaller and smaller and smaller the
Right.
more I measure it,
Right.
Because the speed of sound is constant,
Right.
While the tank's being pressurized. It's just so in that scenario, the speed of sound is not a constant,
Right.
right?
But you can make your measurements by like measuring the speed of sound at the given pressure and get
Yeah.
the tank size. Yeah.
right, but it's just like,
Yeah, but if
like
you assume sound is a constant no matter what, then as pressure changes, then your tank is going to appear to shrink.
Right.
Because the
And so-
sound is speed up. Yeah.
And so you could develop all these amazing theories to work that out, right? And you're
That's
just like,
right.
well, when this is happening, these tanks are actually shrinking, even
That's
though
right.
they're at the same side.
That's right.
So,
Like increasing pressure inside of a tank actually makes the tank smaller.
right. So if you allow for the previous constant to be a variable in that situation, you'll actually discover that the tank size has not changed.
Right. And what's changing?
It might
is-
have actually swelled a little bit.
Right. And what's actually changing is the speed of the thing you were thinking was a constant.
Right. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what theory of relativity does to space and time, because you're trying to make light always do the same thing no matter what.
Right. Yeah. But it's even more weird because it's relative.
Down or
Yeah.
die.
That's what makes it the strangest thing. Like the model that I know of is like, imagine. Okay, so you have two mirrors and they're a light year apart, and they're facing each other. Don't ever do this. Superstition says never face mirrors towards each other, even if they're a light year away
cannot
from each
do
other.
that.
Don't ever do this. It's terribly bad. But anyway.
Because the globe is flat. The globe is flat.
The globe is flat.
No mirror is actually facing it. But if we're in a spherical globe and you lay a mirror down on the floor, it's going to be facing into the mirror that's laying on the floor somewhere else.
That's right. So dumb. Sorry.
Continue.
Oh, you mean like through the planet?
Yeah.
I gotcha. Because I was going to say on a flat globe, if you stand a mirror up, it's going to be facing.
Yeah, you're right.
the mirror.
That's why I was saying really bad.
It's really dumb.
Stupid. Continue with.
But if you just lay a mirror face up on a globe, then it'll be facing some other mirror on some other planet somewhere out in space. It's
right.
given. Okay. Anyway, so you have two mirrors and they're a light year apart. They're facing each other. Now, if I just like fire a laser, basically like light a laser from the top mirror down towards the bottom one. Okay. For that laser to go all the way to the bottom one and then return to the top mirror, it takes 2 years. 2 light years. Right? So 2 years of light traveling to see.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, let's say that a mirror and laser arrangement is moving at light speed in some direction. So like the mirrors are moving sideways.
If there's a mirror on top and a mirror on bottom, and they're facing, one's facing down, one's facing up, and they're moving at light speed
To the right. Yes.
Okay.
So now, let's say that I'm still relative to the mirrors. So I'm watching the mirrors and they're moving at light speed to the right. And I'm watching them. And like you're out there traveling with them, and you shine the laser down from the first mirror towards the second one. From my perspective, the light has to move not just down to the first mirror and back up, but also over in the direction that the mirrors are moving. So it takes 4 years, if C is constant, for the light from the laser to go down the first mirror and back up to the second one. But from your perspective, moving at light speed with the mirrors to the right, it still only takes 2 years. That's relativity.
Right.
And that's what makes it all weird. Like, if you're assuming that it's a constant, it twists everything into strangeness. Right?
Yeah.
Because your own, like, from your perspective, the mirrors aren't moving, so it only takes like 2 years to go down and come back up.
Right.
From my perspective, they are moving, so it takes it 4 years because it has to cross a lot more distance. But since light speed can't change, it must be 4 years for me and 2 years for you,
Yeah.
which makes no sense.
Yeah. It makes no sense.
But that's how relativity works. It's a very basic model of understanding what they mean when they talk about relativity and the speed of light, and why it changes the amount of time things take, or apparently take, based on the relative
Right.
speed.
Because from my perspective, traveling with the mirrors, light moves at light speed.
Right.
And since the mirrors are 1 light year apart, it takes the light a year to get down there and a year to get back.
Right.
From your perspective, light is still moving at light speed,
even
but
though
it actually moves a lot farther for you than it does for me. So it takes a lot longer.
Right. It
Because
takes 4 years. Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
It has to move. It has to move a year down and a year over, because that's how far you've moved. Like since the mirrors are moving to the right at light speed, by the time the light has gone down a year, you've also gone over a year. So it hasn't gotten to the mirror yet.
Right.
It has to keep going over because it's traveling along the tangent.
Right.
So it would take 4 years basically, and that's the same light.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make any sense, and that's the problem with C being a constant. Like,
The other funny thing is, with that model, is that laser
Take care.
actually has to, for you to see it,
has to come towards me.
it has to come towards you.
Right. So the model
But
falls
it's
apart.
just a particle, folks. I'm also seeing it where I am, and so is he, but it's just one thing. I mean, like,
Right.
that doesn't make any sense.
Technically, I would not be able to see a laser moving through space hitting mirrors.
Right.
You would not be able to see it either until it came back at you.
But if there was a detector,
Right.
if the top mirror and the bottom mirror had detectors that, like, instantaneously gave us both on our tablets, on our phones
Slates.
or whatever, a little chime when it happened.
Yeah.
Mine would happen in 1 year and then a year after that, so
Yeah.
a total of 2 years. And yours would not happen for 2 years and then another 2 years after
Yeah.
that.
Right. And that's just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. So that's the way to picture how relativity works. How relativity doesn't work. Wait. That's how everything works when it's wrong. That's what Brett said.
Stand down or die.
So the other thing, let's go with the Doppler. Like, you had that model of the conveyor belt.
Yeah. Okay, so the Doppler effect.
It's really difficult because you have to hold all these things in your head at the same time.
I know I'm going to describe the Doppler effect in terms of sound. So everybody's experienced it, like when a train is passing you or a car honking its horn, or a train horn. It's mostly noticeable in things like that for me. So like a car horn coming at you is a high pitch, and then when it passes you, the pitch shifts down. So it's like that. And you would hear it with an engine or any number of things.
Yeah, anything passing you going fast.
Right. So that Doppler effect is the frequency at which the sound waves are hitting you. And since they are moving at a constant rate, relatively speaking, dang it.
That word has been ruined.
Yeah, the frequency or the speed of sound moves at a constant rate. So
at one atmosphere.
The oscillation that's making the horn coming at you is the frequency. It's how frequently something is vibrating. And so when it's coming at you, those ticks of it vibrating are a lot closer together. So it appears the waves pass you a lot more frequently than they're actually occurring on the horn itself.
Yeah.
And then when it passes by you and is moving away from you, the sound is still traveling the same speed, but the thing doing the vibrating is moving away. So the frequency of that oscillating horn is hitting you less frequently. So that's why the tone shifts down. And I used an analogy to a conveyor belt. And if you're standing at the end of a conveyor belt that's moving towards you, and someone is on the conveyor belt walking at the same speed as the conveyor belt, and they're, say, dropping a quarter.
They're next to it, right? Are they next to it or are they on it?
Okay,
Sorry.
it doesn't matter. If they're standing next to it, that's fine.
Yeah.
And they're dropping a quarter on it once every second. That quarter, you're gonna be looking at the conveyor belt, and it's gonna be moving towards you, and you're gonna see a quarter. And if you were timing it, the quarters would be coming to you every second. But if the person starts to walk away from you along that conveyor belt and continues to drop a quarter every second, if you measured between the quarters on the conveyor belt, they would be further apart.
So they'd be coming to you farther, like longer than a second.
Right, they'd be coming to you less frequently, so
Right.
it would be a lower frequency if they were moving away from you. If they then turn around and come towards you and continue dropping the quarter at once every second, because they're moving now with the conveyor belt, the quarters are going to be closer together if you measure between them. So they'll be coming more frequently, a higher frequency. And if they were moving at the same speed as the conveyor belt, dropping a quarter every second, then when it gets to you, it's going to be a big ass fucking stack of quarters. It's going to nail you. So that's breaking the sound barrier is essentially when the quarters are stacking up as they approach the speed of that conveyor belt until they are at the speed of that conveyor belt. And there's this big stack of quarters in front of them, and then they break through it.
Yeah.
That is the boom that you hear.
So the conveyor belt is the speed of whatever it is we're measuring.
Right. The conveyor belt is the quote-unquote constant speed
Right.
of waves in that medium.
Right.
So the quarters are the placing of the quarter once a second is the frequency of the vibration that's creating the vibration in the medium.
Right.
The motion of the thing towards you or away from you is the Doppler effect. Even though the frequency of the dropping of the quarter remains the same to the object, the frequency that the quarters reach you are different.
Right.
They're higher when it's coming towards you, they're lower when it's going away.
Right. And that works the same way in light. Or the idea is that it works the same way in light. So if light is a constant, if light speed is a constant, that is the conveyor belt. And if a star is moving away from you, then it's making a frequency of light that it always makes.
Yes.
But it's reaching you at a lower frequency than what it would be
Take
actually making. A lower apparent frequency. And that's called a red shift.
It's actually a lower frequency. I mean, if you imagine the light as an
lower, yeah, it's a lower apparent but what we're looking at is the star.
That's what I'm saying. The star itself
It's the same frequency.
the light in the star is being emanated at a certain frequency.
Right.
But the
motion
frequency
away
at
from
which
you.
it's passing through the medium is lower,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, so that's called a redshift and they call it that because in the visual part of the electromagnetic spectrum, red is the lower end. Red is the dark color on the low end, and blue is the color on the high end of the spectrum. So it's a redshift if it's moving away from you. It's called a blue shift if it's moving towards you and the frequency raises.
Yeah, an equivalent phraseology in sound would be a bass shift or a treble shift.
Right. Exactly.
Because bass is the low end of the spectrum and treble is the high.
Right. So, like, I have this idea of explaining the problem with redshift using Kyle's analogy by saying, like, imagine that you're standing at that end of that conveyor belt, and I'm out there walking away from you along the conveyor, but you can't see me. Like, the conveyor's coming through one of those things like plastic flaps, like you see
at the airport. Yeah.
Right. So you don't know where.
Let's use luggage, okay?
Yeah. Okay, it's luggage, right? So I'm putting down luggage, right? No, I'm putting down quarters, but you can't see me. So all you can do is you're trying to figure out what I'm doing based on the frequency of quarters coming in. You know I'm putting down a quarter every second. Okay.
Because you've seen a bunch of other Russes putting down quarters every second.
You know that all Russes all over the universe put down quarters every second on conveyor belts. Okay. No matter what they're doing.
It's type 1 Russes.
That's right. It's main sequence Russes.
Yeah, there you go.
So there's a main sequence Russ out there, and like let's say that the farther away from you that I am, the faster away the faster I'm moving. So if I'm like close to you, I'm just kind of walking. If I'm way out there on the conveyor belt, I'm hauling ass. I'm running really quickly. Okay, so you can your idea is that you can judge the distance that I am from you along the conveyor belt by the frequency of quarters coming in, because you know that I always put them down one a second, right? So if I've got a deep red shift, a deep quarter shift, like a red quarter shift, something like that. The quarters are coming to you like every 4 or 5 seconds. You know that I'm moving pretty quickly before I put those quarters down. Right, I've taken a lot of steps. If the quarters are coming to you like at 1.01 seconds, then I'm pretty close. Right, I'm barely moving.
Yeah.
Now let's say that Kyle and I are both out there, right? And you think that we're both main sequence Russ and main sequence Kyle, and that we both put down quarters every second. Okay, so I'm on one side of the conveyor belt and he's on the other side. We're both putting down quarters every second. If you see my quarters really far apart and Kyle's quarters that are close together, then you could assume that Kyle is closer to you than me. That I'm way out there and I'm hauling ass, whereas Kyle is closer to you and he's not hauling as much ass. But what if I just didn't drink coffee that morning? And I was failing to put down a quarter every second, and I'm actually right next to Kyle, and we're talking about weird ancient shit and finding arrowheads, and I'm just lazily putting down a quarter every 4 seconds while he's putting down his every second. You would assume, based on the quarter frequency, that I was way out there, but we're actually right next to each other, talking to each other. That's like ARP's problems that he's coming up with these galaxies. Like, he's finding evidence that these galaxies are interacting through these filaments of matter.
Right. Or we're both on the same side of the conveyor belt, and he's in front of me. And my quarters are coming at once a second, and Russ's are coming at one every 2 or 3 seconds.
Right. And I'm just being lazy because Kyle's not looking because he's in front of me or whatever. Brett's like, what if you're connected by a tether? You look through the flaps and see, wait a minute, there's a rope going between those two.
Yeah.
Russ can't be way out there farther than Kyle because that rope can't be that long.
Yeah, and we know that the distance of all ropes is only
100 feet. So Russ can't be way out there at the end of the conveyor belt. That's not a main
the
sequence.
length of all ropes.
The length of all ropes is only 100 feet. That can't be a main sequence Russ. So that's the analogy for ARP, and the problem with redshift. When there's a quasar that is visually in front of a deeply redshifted quasar that's visually in front of a not so redshifted large galaxy, that tells us that redshift is not what we think it is. That tells us that the redshift is not what they think it is.
Yeah.
We don't think it's that.
And if the redshift theory is wrong, then we have no idea how far away anything is,
or how old
that we have observed,
or how
in the
fast
universe.
anything is moving. That's right. And since we don't know how far away it is, we don't know how old it is.
Yep.
And since we don't know how far away or how old it is, we don't know how fast it's moving.
And we also have main sequence stars all wrong.
That's right.
Because, seriously, we have observed...
They may be main sequence in our galaxy, but...
Right, that's what I'm saying. We've observed them in our galaxy, and then whatever
Extrapolated
for
that.
whatever reason, they assume that these other ones are the same.
Right,
Maybe
because
they have.
in a vastly evolving universe where the farther out you look, the farther back in time it is, those stars must be the same, right? It's ridiculous, really, when you think about it. If I'm looking at something that's 2 billion light years away, and I'm already assuming that means it's 2 billion years old, and I know that the universe has been evolving from a Big Bang universe, why would I assume that the main sequence stars in that 2 billion year old thing are going to be the same as the one in this galaxy?
Yeah.
Because I want to be able to tell people how old things are.
It's just crazy. Like all of this stuff that we're looking out, like these massive galaxy clusters and stuff that they're billions and billions and billions of light years away. They could be really close
Yeah.
and really small.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, like, that screws up the whole dark matter thing and like all that stuff because they're looking
Right.
at these what they think are ridiculously massive structures.
Yeah. Quasars are like these gigantically enormous, like massively powerful. Like we look at these galaxies and we're wondering, like, if you notice over time, like just in the past 10 years, the estimated size of black holes at the centers of galaxies have gone up and up and up. And now they're talking about black holes with like the mass of 2 billion solar masses, like the mass of 2 billions of our stars, of our sun. You know, it's like a black hole with 100 billion solar masses. And you're like, wow.
How is the gravity escaping?
How is the gravity getting out of that black hole if it can only move at the speed of light? That's great, Brett. How much can a main sequence rust change in 3 hours? Because the universe is like a bajillion years old, so 2 billion is like the equivalent of 3 hours. How much can a main sequence rust change in 3 hours? Not much. Well, the estimated age of the universe right now is like 14 billion. 14 billion years.
And that's all based on redshift too,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So, look it up, folks. Doppler. There's some really bad examples online of how it works.
Right. And he's making another good point. They need more time for things to be possible. Like, if you look at like, I think that all this stuff connects. Like, you guys know this. Like, that I look at all these things and I think that they're all connected to not some giant scheme, but to the standard model. Usually when you see that term in articles or whatever, they're talking about cosmology. Here at Snake Bros, we use it to mean like all theory for current science.
Yeah.
But the standard model is something that has been propagated massively throughout our school systems. And it is basically saying, here's what the universe is like, and here's how your world works, and here's what everything is, and here's how old everything is, here's how far away everything is, and here's how impossible it is to get to those things, and here's how ancient this stuff is, and it can't be these things. And like it gives this very delineated system in which, you know, it's very difficult to look at where you're looking at something where you're like, well, that rock formation is 300 million years old. That can't possibly be a human bone there.
Yeah.
You understand? Like, so even scientists who aren't given to like
Stand down or die.
like doubting things like that see like, okay, that's impossible for that to be a person's bone because it's 300 million years old. Like, they wouldn't be thinking that without this model
I cannot do that.
that includes how far away stars are, because it's telling us how old the universe is. You see what I'm saying? Like, all this stuff is connected. Like
Yeah, and there's basically, because everything is accelerating away from us at an accelerating rate, there's no way for anything to ever contact us or ever get here from another star. You know,
Exactly.
it's just like there's no way to approach the speed of light.
that's right.
There's just, it's like,
You can't get off your planet. Nothing will ever come here. I mean, doesn't it sound like a trap?
yeah, it kind of sounds like a prison, yeah.
Yeah.
Or just a way to keep you in.
Yes, exactly. It's a mental trap. Right? And you have these well-meaning, highly educated people who go out into the field and see things that they think are impossible based on this entire other standard model, based on their trust of other scientists who are, because like an archaeologist doesn't know anything about cosmology. He's not studying that, right? But his idea of what he's doing is is bolstered by what he knows about the ideas that these other people have about how ancient things are, geologists, and it's all you put it all together and you get this gigantic model that keeps us from really seeing our past.
Oh, and by the way, there never was a greater time for mankind other than now.
Now, that's right, linear development, the Church of Progress.
This is the greatest it's ever been, so there's nothing in the past to look.
That's right, we have
Forward to?
We got our bobblehead dolls of striped toothpaste and atom bombs. We're the greatest it's ever been.
Yeah. Oh, John Anthony West. Yeah.
Yeah. So I challenging the standard model is hard, but kicking over stacks of assumptions is a lot of fun. But they can be annoying when you find them. Like you find out over and over that like this whole thing is based on this gigantic stack of assumptions that don't really have any foundation. Like the main sequence stars thing. You know, like that has very little foundation. Like, okay, so we've seen a few of those in our galaxy, right? Which is within 100,000 light years close to us. Like our galaxy is theoretically 100,000 light years across. So the light from anything we see in it, based on the standard model, is never older than 100,000 years. Well, if you're looking at something 2 billion light years away and you think that means it's 2 billion years old and you know that the universe has been evolving for the past 14 billion years, and that's like 2 billion is an appreciable fraction of that 14 billion years.
Stand down.
Why are you assuming the light is the same? The stars are the same. They talk about the evolution of galaxies because when we look at the galaxies that they think are really, really far away, they're these little smudges. They don't have the beautiful spiral shape
Right.
that closer
Cannot
ones
do
have.
that.
Right? Now that is something interesting. Like, why is that? Like, when we look out there, we see that these galaxies that appear to be closer to us based on redshift have this beautiful, like, spiral structure, whereas the ones that appear to be very distant have this, like, little smudge. They don't have the structure.
Well, that's part of Halton Arp's theory is that the redshift is actually what he calls intrinsic, but it's basically matter coming into existence, and as it gains mass, its redshift is actually decreasing.
Right.
So it would kind of make sense to see a newly formed galaxy out
Be a
there that's a little
smudge.
fuzzy smudge that's highly redshifted as it's gaining mass.
Yeah. So its redshift is actually not a redshift. It's actually, that's the frequency of light that it's making.
Right.
Based on its low density
Yeah.
and low energy level.
Which still doesn't make sense to me yet. I'm still trying to figure that out and looking into how his whole theory works. It's hard to find
But remember that.
good audio on it.
But remember that, like a long time ago, I came down here before the Tangent Cube was the Tangent Cube, but it was still the Shed Cube. And you were in here and you were listening to something about this ancient Egyptian philosophy, and they were talking about how we used to be more in the spirit realm than physical, and that everything was far less dense, and that over time we gained in density and lost our connection to the spirit realm.
Yes. Yeah, that is a really interesting connection. And I was thinking of that as an old cosmological model of the solar system forming, right? That's kind of the way it was, that the guy was interpreting it. And that it was this big cloud.
Right.
And as things started to coalesce, so did the consciousness begin to coalesce into the physical realm.
Yeah.
And as little moons and planets were formed, and like eventually the sun was formed, these beings they step up in higher and higher levels of being in the physical. It was a really strange thing. It was called.
But then why do we have
It was called
retrograde things?
Egyptian Mysteries, and I think there's actually a free audiobook of it. It wasn't very long.
Or just go play Titan Quest. No, it wasn't a Titan Quest.
I don't know, but the thing that it just, if the redshift idea is incorrect, it just like completely freaking blows the whole thing out.
Right. So if we realize that there aren't constants and that the redshift is incorrect, then we are floating in about 4,000 years of known recorded history amidst an unknown ocean of time.
Yeah.
We don't know how far away anything is or how old anything is, including on our own planet.
Yeah. And basically, if all that's true, then the best way to figure out how the universe works is to go get a Ouija board and ask the bees to tell you if the owl knows the answer, and if you're going to meet a dark stranger in an alleyway tomorrow, knock on wood.
That's right. And keep eyes in the back of your head.
Yeah. And don't face two mirrors at each other.
Especially not from a light year apart.
Yeah.
Shooting lasers. You really confuse the guy who's not moving with you. All right. I think that's about it, folks. Thank you guys very much. This was episode 56 of Brothers of the Serpent Podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. Impossible bananas and knocking on wood. So I want to thank Kyle and Ty for all the music. And what's the other song that you put in there?
Oh, Blackwater Holler.
Yeah, Blackwater Holler. You guys check them out.
Daniel and Wesley.
Yeah, Daniel and Wesley. Great song for tropical banana islands.
Hell yeah. Song's called Roots. Be coming out soon, boy, in the hills.
That's right. And thanks to Kyle for all the production. Thanks to Laura for all the intros. Thanks to Brenner for the sands of time and the monitor. Thanks to Brent, the watcher, for keeping us on the straight and narrow in terms of the truth. And thanks to all of you guys for listening and putting up with us and our freaking...
Arrowhead Mountain.
Yeah, we really appreciate it, guys.
Yep. Good night, Adamu. Go eat some bananas.